So let's start. People will join soon. There's always a lot that already join in. So I will start to speak, and then more people will have the time to come in. So welcome everybody to the webinar. The webinar actually we will discuss practical step for elevating all the digital transportation in production flow and manufacturing. My name is Chen. I'm from IPACKCHEM, and I'm thrilled to be your host today as we delve into the dynamic realm of digital transformation in manufacturers. Today webinar, we bring together industry leaders, I call them also innovators and experts who have successfully navigated through all the digital landscape, turning challenges into opportunities and reshape the future of different manufacturers, global manufacturers worldwide. We have the privilege of hearing from two distinguished speakers, Greg Kenzie, a partner in Argonne, and Simon Billit, who is the Group Operational Excellence Director at IPACKCHEM. Greg will kick off our discussion by shedding the light on the reality of the digital transformation in manufacturing. What are the impacts? What are the insights? Practical approaches of how to develop it and how to implement it. He will draw on his wealth of experience. Greg will provide valuable insights into the transformative journey, as well as share practical approaches that organization took with this adaptation of the digital age. Following Greg, we will hear from Simon Billit, who will take it through the compelling success story of IPACKCHEM through the digital transformation. Simon, with his extensive background in OpEx around the world, especially, will take us and will walk us through the challenges, triumphs, and the overall impact of the digitization on operational excellence and the benefits you can get with it in IPACKCHEM and other places. But that's not all. I will end by discuss shortly about the importance of connecting real-time operational intelligence in manufacturing and what Matix is doing and offering some glimpse into the future of manufacturing efficiency. And throughout the webinar, we encourage you to actively participate by submitting your question during the designated QA session, and in general, you will find a button in the bottom of your in the bottom of your screen, and you can just click and have the Q&A. Engagement is what makes this discussion truly enriching. So back it up and let's start with all the practical steps for success with digital transformation. The first speaker, or let me introduce Greg Kinsey, is a partner in Argonne, a Paris-based consultancy specialist, or especially in operation, strategy, as well as transformation. Greg has over 30 years of international experience in manufacturing automation, digitization, and performance improvement. He will share some of his insights and practical advice about digital transformation. So Greg, with pleasure, you can share your presentation and let's start.
Thank you, Ken. I will share my screen. And for some reason, it's not allowing me to share my screen.
So I will try to allow you. You cannot share your screen?
No, the button to share doesn't allow me to click on it.
Okay, so if I will open your presentation, it's fine?
Yeah, that would be fine.
As a backup, so I will open, just let me know when to move to the next slide.
Okay, that's probably better use of time. Apologies for
Yeah.
that. It's funny, we just tested it 10 minutes ago and it worked.
Okay, so just a second. You can start. It will be shared in 1 second. Okay.
Okay, great. I can see this slide. So thank you. Just to share a little bit about my background. So I have over 30 years experience in manufacturing. I've worked in industry. I've worked in the IT sector. And most of the last decade or so, I worked for Hitachi, implementing IoT platforms with clients, mostly around Europe. I'm based in Paris, but I've worked internationally my entire career. And so, what I'm going to share with you are some of my experiences with real world projects that we've done, real world clients that I work with across many different sectors and many different countries. So, if you go to the next slide, please. Earlier this year, there was a quote that I liked, and I'm going to kick it off with that. And that was at the ARC Advisory Group meeting in Orlando, Florida, in February, where Craig Resnick said, according to our research, 83% of end users and OEMs are moving forward with their digital transformation journey, but only about 7% feel they have completed the process. And I couldn't agree with this more. I think there are very few companies out there that feel like they have completed a process. You could argue that maybe there is no end to the process. But in fact, there are very few companies that have advanced to a significant level. And most of the clients I talk to in Europe are saying either, Greg, we're really just starting, or we've done a small proof of concept, a small pilot. We learned from that, but we really haven't really moved the needle in terms of scaling and in terms of getting to that next level. So if you can go to the next slide, please. With that as kind of a background, this idea of a journey is something that most companies talk about. And really, what's behind the journey is addressing these two key pain points that nearly every company I speak with talks about. They say, first of all, we're not using very much data for our daily decision making. So, whether that's an operator, whether that's engineers and quality people and maintenance people and technicians in a factory, whether that's the factory management or even the executive level management, across the board, a lot of people are saying we have lots and lots of data, but we're not using it for our daily decision making. And the reason they're not using it is because they struggle to access it. They struggle to gain access to data, to get data that you can compare, get data that's really accurate, that's real time versus old data, which might not be accurate anymore. And so this is the pain point that smart manufacturing is addressing. And in fact, it is a journey, and that journey has typical phases. And one of the things that we like to look at with our clients is to plan that journey. It's a multi-year journey. It can be 5 or 10 years, and as you grow your capabilities, you will have additional value that's unlocked. Typically, the first phase of a project is to improve visibility. Almost every factory says we don't have end-to-end visibility. And so, at the very first level of a solution, you can start to have better visibility and you can answer that question: what's happening? What's happening in my factory right now, end to end? And that can give you insight, that can give you visibility in terms of bottlenecks, in terms of anomalies. Anomaly detection is one of the earliest use cases. It can help you understand really what's going on end to end. Once you do that, then you can move on to the second phase, which is to start to understand the causation, understand the causal variables that are creating different problems for you. And so then you can understand why. Why do we have bottlenecks? Why are we having bad quality now? And start to look at the factors that contribute to that bad quality. Or why are we constrained? What's driving those constraints? And typically, once you can do that, then it's a next logical step to say, okay, if we understand the causation, we understand the key X's that create the Y, then we can predict when those problems will happen ahead of time. We can look at the data and say, well, at current course and speed, we will have a bottleneck by tomorrow, or we will start making defects because the factors underneath it are starting to move in that direction. And that's where you start to really unlock a lot of power, because you start to not only understand what's happening now, but you can understand what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter. Once you're able to master that data, then the next level is you start to have prescriptive analytics, which says we're going to have a problem. To prevent that problem from happening, or at least to minimize the impact, what should we do? Should we start up new machines? Should we add people to a certain activity? Should we take away people from a certain activity? Should we stop making sub-assemblies and put more activity on final assembly? Should we go back to our original supplier because the original supplier had a more stable delivery or a more stable product? So again, the prescriptive analytics starts to suggest to you things that you can do to prevent problems from happening. The holy grail at the end, the ultimate, is when the AI is become smart enough to fix itself. So not only does it prescribe things to do to optimize production, but it actually does it for me. And so during my time at Hitachi, we did some advanced research on that. And I'd say that's still probably a few years out. And I think most manufacturers today can get real value just by having the visibility, the insights, and the predictive analytics. If we go to the next slide, please.
Just a second.
So, what about the business impact? What's the value of all this? And if we look back over the last 5 or 6 years, the World Economic Forum launched the Lighthouse Factories initiative. I think most of you are familiar with that. I happened to be at Hitachi during that time, and Hitachi, we submitted one of our factories, and indeed we were one of the first 44 Lighthouse winners. And an analysis that was done after the initial 44 factories, they looked at where were the benefits, where was the value unlocked. So if we look at this chart, you can see, first of all, that there's 5 general categories: productivity, sustainability, agility, speed, and customization. And then you can look at the dots. Each dot represents where one or more of the Lighthouse factories were getting results. So in the scale from left to right, each one of the grid markings is 10%. So what jumps out, first of all, is productivity. And you see that at least one Lighthouse factory had a 90% productivity improvement. Other ones as well had in the ballpark of 20%, 30%, 50% productivity gains. That's huge. Operating cost reduction, that probably goes hand in hand with productivity to some extent. OEE, depending on the industry you're in. For example, in food and beverage industry, OEE is a very important KPI for managing. Again, the neighborhood of 10, 20, 30% OEE improvements. Those are big gains. Particularly in my experience at Hitachi, we focused on lead time reduction. And so the dot there that shows I think 60% reduction of lead time, that was the Hitachi factory in Japan. And that was due to us being able to not only reduce that lead time, but also improve the service levels vis-a-vis that lead time. Speed to market is also important for launching new products. That may be relevant for your business. Sustainability is also an area, I think, where the initial use cases, again, over the past 5 years, have been about reducing energy consumption. I personally did some work in the automotive industry where we looked at the electricity being consumed by welding robots and by paint shops. Those are both two very energy consumptive activities. Ken, if you can click next, I'm going to shift and talk about what's happening this year. And so, what I try to do is just reflect on the conversations I'm having with clients currently, and these are the hot topics in terms of performance. What most people are looking for, first of all, is to increase output without capex investment. That's one of the biggest requests I'm hearing throughout this year, throughout the last 9 months. And I think that's in part a result of the recovery that we've had after the COVID pandemic, that many factories are running at full capacity. Also, a lot of companies have redesigned their industrial footprint. They may have fewer factories, they may be reshoring, moving factories from country A to country B. And so, this notion of how can I get more output out of my existing physical capacity is a big theme. Along with that, flexibility and agility are very hot topics. And that, I think, goes in line with the economic uncertainty that we face today, as well as supplier uncertainty, and to some extent, customer uncertainty as well. I have a lot of clients who tell me that their customers are canceling orders, their customers are changing orders, and they need to have more agility. Workplace transformation is another big conversation. Many of my clients talk about we need to access our data more easily. We want to reduce the stress on our people because they're spending all their time firefighting. They don't have the data they need to do their jobs. Uh, there's a lot of interest in innovation in manufacturing, which 10 years ago that sounded strange to talk about innovation in manufacturing. Today, it's a very hot topic. People want to dramatically rethink their manufacturing. And that is really I would say, the essence of when we talk about Industry 4.0. It's about reimagining how those factories operate, reimagining the very production model and the very processes. And last but not least, I'm hearing increasing interest from our clients around how do we integrate people, robots, and AI, and how can we do that effectively to drive our performance. So if we go to the next slide, please. What I think it really boils down to are addressing some of the human issues on the shop floor. And I had one client in Germany, in the automotive industry, one of the big German car makers. And my client told me, he said, Greg, almost all of our problems are due to human error. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, almost everything is due to somebody making a mistake, picking the wrong part, making a judgment call because they didn't have the data, so they guessed at something, or using the wrong tool on something and damaging it, or even at a management level, making a forecast about something where they don't have the data. So human error is the number one thing I think you can address with a solution like Matix or some of these other solutions, which allow you to remove that human error. Secondly, is work silos. And one of the first projects I did, this was a few years back, it was in the aerospace industry here in France. Um, I saw some people in the factory walking up to a whiteboard with their phone, and they were taking a picture of the whiteboard. And so we asked them, why are you taking a picture of that? And the guy explained, he said, well, I work 500 meters that way, and that data is important to me so I can anticipate. And then he explained all the reasons why he needed to know that data. So that told us that it's siloed. The data on those whiteboards only existed in that part of the factory. Somebody in the other part of the factory had no visibility to that. So if you digitalize it, you instantly have the ability to share that data. The third one, and this is one I'm hearing a lot of recently, is we're overly dependent on the wisdom of the elders. In other words, there are people on the shop floor that have been there 25 years. They know how things work. They know when they hear noises or they see things with machines, they know what it means because they have the experience. The problem is, of course, they're retiring. And one of the biggest issues now in manufacturing, not just in Europe, but I think everywhere in the world, is that the knowledge is retiring. It's very hard to find new people to recruit for manufacturing. And they come in with no knowledge of the history, no knowledge of the machines or the processes. So to me, that's another big argument of why you want to digitalize, to create that knowledge that everybody can have it and use it. And then as your elders retire, you can move on with a more intelligent factory, which embeds a lot of that knowledge that those people had tacitly in their brains. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I've noticed as well is that a digital project is quite different from an IT project. And in many companies, there are kind of two roles and two teams, a digital team and an IT team. In other companies, it's the same team. I worked many, many years in the IT industry, and I can tell you that an IT director is primarily focused on cost, reliability of the IT systems, standardization, huge topic for IT departments. You want to standardize the laptops, you want to standardize the applications, you want to get rid of shadow IT, all those things. You want stability, of course. The business depends on the IT to run every day now. The IT can never be down. It has to be stable. And of course, security. There's a huge emphasis today on making sure that your IT systems are secure. On the other hand, the digital transformation is a bit of a different mission. It's about investing money to transform your operations. It's about experimenting. It's about innovating. It includes failure. It includes trying crazy experiments, having failures, and learning from those failures. It's about challenging the status quo, challenging about the way things are done, and it's ultimately about transforming the operations to make a step change in the performance. So if you can click again on the slide, please. Um, this means that these projects are quite different. And so, again, just to characterize them, IT projects tend to like proven industry standard solutions. I had one client who told me, he said, Greg, we just use the same applications as all of our competitors. And so if we're all using the same software applications, how does that give us any competitive advantage at all? It doesn't. It just makes sure that we are at level with the industry. The objective is to then obviously get as good as your best competitor. It's about having projects that have traditional project management methodologies, which means you know exactly how many months or how many weeks it's going to take you to roll out a system. Generally speaking, you know what that system looks like. You have a small group of people who configure that. Maybe they interview some users, but there's not a whole lot of user-driven ideation. You're not going off and asking users for ideas. And typically, IT budgets are very tight these days, and they're running on very strict timeframes. Digital projects, on the other hand, need some space in order to innovate, because what you're really looking for is to create something that your competitors don't have yet. And that's what my client told me as well. He said, Greg, we want to invent something that's going to give us a competitive advantage, that once we figure it out, our competitors are going to be scratching their heads. How are we performing so well? Because of the digitalization. So the idea is to create that new competitive advantage. To do that, you need different methods. You need to apply design thinking. You need to apply agile innovation. These are very different methods than the IT department typically works with. And it requires a large amount of user ideation. And so typically you run this as an investment portfolio. That means some projects will fail. It means other projects will create huge returns. But over time, if you have the right portfolio, and if you have 20 digital projects, you might have 7 that produce a very, very good return. You might have another 7 or 8 which have okay returns, and then the rest of them might actually have a negative return. And so if you manage that as a portfolio, it's a very different way of working. And last but not least, there's this idea of an incubation replication model, which a lot of companies will start with an incubation. They'll do a pilot or a sandbox. Once they get it figured out, then they can roll that out to another 10 factories. So we go to the next slide, please. So the takeaways, some practical lessons learned. I think, first of all, it's really important to have a strong stakeholder alignment and buy-in. I talked to one of my clients in the UK once, and they were explaining to me what they had done. And he said, we were going to collect data from video cameras. So we installed these cameras in the factory, and then we started to build the software. And within 2 or 3 weeks, the workers all climbed up on ladders and they turned the cameras to point to the walls. I said, well, Did you tell them what you were doing? Well, we didn't do a good job on that. So your first stakeholders are your factory workers. They need to know what's happening. They need to be part of it. They need to participate in it. In addition to that, I've met a number of companies where I ask a question: who's in charge of your digital manufacturing initiative? That's an interesting question, Greg. I'm the IT director and I'm responsible for part of it. But the plant manager, she actually owns it. But then the operational excellence people, they're driving the use cases. So it gets very complicated. And you realize that they don't have a good governance model. It's not clear who's in charge, and all the stakeholders are not well aligned and bought into the program. Second point is you need to perform a thorough analysis of how things work today. If you don't understand how things work today, one is that you're going to miss the opportunity to improve it. But secondly, you're going to miss the ability to get the ideas from the different people, to understand in more detail what's happening. So the example I saw of the people taking pictures of a whiteboard, if we had not been in the factory observing, we wouldn't have observed that behavior. And that observation gave us an idea for a digital solution. Thirdly, learning and applying the agile methods and mindset that goes with that. And again, I had a client in Germany, and he said, Greg, we're very far from an agile mindset. Can you help us to start to think more agile? And then last but not least, and it bears repeating, is solicit ideas from the users, even those ideas that are thought of as crazy ideas, sometimes can actually bring a lot of value. And as we learned in operational excellence, the people who work in the process daily, they understand things, they have ideas, and if you just ask them, how could you use data? Or if you could have any data, what would it be? Or how would you like to see data presented? In what format? And one of the things I've learned is it has to be in a way that they can easily use it, that they can quickly grasp it. They may want it on a handheld. They may want it on a big screen. They may want it streamed on their watches so that they have a quick look at some machine that they're crawling around and maintaining. So again, understanding the ideas from the users is huge value. Next slide, please. So I'm going to end with a question: or do you feel ready? And sometimes we see many customers who jump into investments without preparing. At other times, we see companies that quickly invest and they aren't ready, so they don't extract the value. And last case probably are there's many companies that feel stuck. They're ready to pull the trigger on a technology solution, but they're not sure. And so, what you need to think about is, are you ready? Is first of all, what's the clarity of purpose? Why do you want to digitalize a specific factory? What problems do you want to solve? What's your vision of the factory of the future? I had one client in Italy. He presented to me probably 25 slides on their digital factory or their Industry 4.0 program. And he talked about IoT, and he talked about blockchain, and he talked about machine learning and all sorts of digital twin, all these technology concepts. And in the end, he said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Well, yeah. What's your vision for the factory of the future?" And he said, "Well, I just explained it to you." I said, "No, you explained a lot of technologies, but what will the factory have to be? Will you have mass customization? Will you have to have a radical shift in your delivery times or your quality levels? What will the tack time be? What will the changeover times look like? So what are you shooting for? What are you aiming for? What's that vision for the performance of the factory? Once you know the performance vision, then you can figure out what's the right technologies to apply. And so one of the things we've done in Argon and Co. is we've developed a readiness model, readiness assessment, where we can go in with a questionnaire, and we typically ask our clients different questions about their capabilities. And based on that, we can assess their readiness in terms of, do they have the right expertise? Are they assimilating the technology into the shop floor? Or are they at a level of data maturity that they can even begin to do some of these things. And again, cleansing data, integrating data, just having basic data is sometimes the biggest roadblock. And last but not least, is there a pragmatic action plan? So I'll end with a quote from one of our clients. He said, "I had no doubts about the potential for digitalizing our operations, but it was really eye-opening to realize how far we are from being ready to get started." And so I think there's a lot of great technologies out there today. There's obviously a lot of buzz right now around AI, but there's been buzz around things like digital twins and IoT and all those kinds of things. I think the important thing is to look deeply at what you're trying to achieve, have clarity of purpose, and then get some of the basic pieces together to prepare to execute that. So if you can go to the next slide. So thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I can take those now.
Great. Thanks for the. Sorry, go ahead.
Or we can wait then. I see two questions coming in. One, do you think the impact on sustainability will increase in the next years? And second question, are already enough efforts being done? Is there still a lot possibility? Well, first of all, I think that the focus on sustainability is hardly begun in manufacturing. For as much as we talk about sustainability, I think we're at the very, very beginning of the journey. So, yes, there's a lot to do. And I think it starts with looking at things like energy consumption and carbon emissions and getting to net zero, and obviously looking at scope one, scope two, and scope three. But I think there's also a lot to be done around environmental packaging and the necessary changes that you make to get to there. There's a lot to be done around waste reduction, and as we know, any practitioners of lean will tell you that lean is green, and if you can take waste out of the production line, you're going to be able to have a sustainability impact. So good question. And I think, yes, definitely, I anticipate a lot more activity in this area. And certainly, I'm getting a lot more inquiries from our clients on that topic of sustainability. The second question is, what are the top three types of organizations where Matix has the biggest ROI? I guess, Ken, that's more a question for you for Matix.
Yeah, maybe I will touch it a little bit later when we will come into my presentation. But in general, we are working with different manufacturer, mainly mass production manufacturer, where we have the biggest impact of the day by day running after the finished goods. So there's the biggest impact mainly in the area of food, plastic infrastructure-based manufacture, packaging, some metal, but mass production, it's important. And we gain actually quite fast ROI at the first level. In the starting point of 3 months, 4 months, you gain 10 to 15 to 20% of more machine availability, because you start to see the things, you see your major OE and issues like this. And the size are there difference. I mean, can start from single site to big plants, which is, I don't know, 70, 80 plants around. And there, the major part, there is more to achieve standardization and to learn from each other. I will get into it a little bit later. By the way, any other question to Greg? So Greg, again, thank you for a great insight and sharing with us your knowledge and information. By the way, you will get all the information about Greg and Simon later on, if someone wants to get in touch with them. The next speaker will be Simon Billet. Is the group OPEX director in IPACKCHEM. IPACKCHEM is leader design manufacturer of high performance rigid plastic barrier packaging, jerry cans and others, with around 14 factories globally. Simon have more than 30 years hands-on experience improving operational performance. I mainly believe in people, so I can say it's not just the system, it's a lot about the people. Simon have a lot of experience when it comes to design, implementing all the approaches of the operational excellence, and integrating of TPM, Lean, Sigma methodologic. It was part of different organization implementation, like from UNDA to Smurfit and others. So it's more, Simon, if you take the role, you know everything better than me, that's for sure. And he is actually a customer of Matex. So Simon, if you can share your presentation, I will appreciate.
Perfect. Okay, you see my screen okay, Shen, yeah?
Yeah, everything is fine.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I was saying to Shen and the ladies and gents in Matix earlier, I think I'm at that age now, whenever people say you've got lots of experience, it's a polite way of saying you're getting very old. Yeah, so my name's Simon Billett. I've been in manufacturing now for well over 30 years. Working in maintenance, production management, factory management, but really for those 30 years, a lot of my focus has been around operational excellence and really focusing on improving operational performance. The company I work for is a company called IPACKCHEM, which Shen very kind of briefly introduced. So we're a plastics packaging business. We have a very special process whereby we create a barrier inside of plastic containers using fluorine and nitrogen. And that allows these containers to be used for some very volatile, very hazardous materials. We've got 14 plants across the globe. And we've really 3 real focuses in the organization. We want to create great people, really focus on the development of our people, great processes, reliable, repeatable processes. And ultimately, if we get those 2 right, then we're gonna create great products and kind of great services. This is just kind of a bit of a world map in terms of where we operate. The real challenge in IPACKCHEM is, as you can see, geographically, we've got factories pretty much in every continent. So we've factories in North America, in Brazil, in South Africa, in India, in China, in Russia, UK, France, and Hungary. And we've grown very quickly through acquisition. And one of the great challenges in acquisition is that you inherit a myriad of systems and ways of operating. And our focus over the last 2 or 3 years is really being to start standardizing the approach of the factories, not just in ways of working, but in systems and infrastructure. Just to kind of give you a bit of a feel, these are a few photographs from the factories. So we make blow molded containers. So on the left hand side is a photograph from our factory in Brazil, and then just a couple of photographs to kind of set the scene from plants in South Africa. So we've some really nice factories with some really great people, but one of our biggest Achilles heels is we have lots of different systems, and we have a myriad of data that sits on paperwork. The problem with paperwork in data is, unless you can see it real time, turning that into information in the next 24 hours is pretty worthless, because trying to make a decision a day later after you've had an issue in the factory, this is an area that is fundamental to our approach in terms of operational excellence. We have in IPACKCHEM, we've focused an awful lot in the last 2 years since I've been in the group in creating very clear strategic operating thought processes. So 3, 5 year operating strategies, where each of our factories has a very clear vision, a very clear purpose of the kind of organization they want to create. We have a very clear scorecard, a very clear KPI roadmap that covers the next 3 years with very clear targets. And that's all been turned into financial numbers, because ultimately, as a business, you know, we're here to make money, and we're here to return cash to our shareholders. We take those objectives and we create some very clear ways of working, some very clear tactics, month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year, of how we're going to deliver those numbers. And then we also have to focus not just on the tactics that we're going to implement from an operational improvement perspective, but also the structural and supporting systems that we're going to need to address. And ultimately, we have to create clarity in our approach, in our actions. But what's very clear in IPACKCHEM is we need to give our people the tools to succeed. And those tools emanate very much around data and around data intelligence. Within our operational strategy, we've 6 key levers over the next 2 to 3 years that are a fundamental part of our focus. Our whole operational structure and the skill sets of our people. We have an OPEX approach, which we call IOS. It's an operating system. Yeah, many of you will be very familiar with Six Sigma, with Lean, with TPM. This is our house. It's the system that we're employing throughout the globe. We've an absolute focus in the automation of inline quality checks, a focus in packing and handling automation, the design of our operational organization. And then our 6th lever in the bottom left-hand corner is our manufacturing information systems, the real focus around creating real-time data to give our operating teams the best chance of being successful. Because fundamentally, if we want our operating teams to make great decisions, we need to give them real-time data. And today in IPACKCHEM, many of our factories are operating still in a very traditional, very paper-based way. As I said, we've grown through acquisition. In the last 8 or 9 years, the company has grown from 4 or 5 factories up to 13, 14, and we will keep growing. And as I said, this brings some very unique challenges. All of the factories will have a different ERP system, a different level of automation. Some will have a computer maintenance management system. Some will have a management execution system. Some will, some won't. So we've this whole myriad of systems, of standards of data, of reports, of variation in business intelligence. We aim by the end of 2025 to really align our supply chain into a single approach. And as I showed you on the previous slide, to do that, we have these 6 operational levers. And the one I particularly want to share with you all today is the lever of data intelligence. Now, fundamentally, we need to create a culture of real-time data where our operating teams can make real-time decisions at the source. And what's very important about that, because of the variation in our factories, is we need to make sure whatever we do with data, with information, that the systems and the companies that we work with, their systems are scalable. From a factory that has 5 production lines to a factory that has 52 production lines. It's a huge difference. So we really can't look at data and management information systems as a one size fits all. So we began working with Matix about 6 or 7 months ago now, and our real focus at this point in time is the areas that you see ringed in red: visualization of data, analytics, the notification and standardization of automated reports, the escalation in terms of if a machine is down for 1 hour, the people that need to be escalated to. If we have a variation in a quality parameter, the people that need to be escalated to. The integration of our planning systems, the integration of our targets and KPI standards, and then also the development of the reporting systems that we want to create. And really our first focus in IPAC is to get away from the massive paper systems that we have at the moment, and really to give our operations teams the best chance of success. And Hen kind of touched on earlier that when he introduced me, that I've a great focus in people. And to some degree, that can seem a little bit counterintuitive to Industry 4.0. But I work in a company where even our machinery, the variation in age is 25, 30 years in terms of the age and the sophistication of the machinery. So I know we're probably 10 or 15 years away from really getting to the end game in terms of automation and automated systems. So we've got to be very tuned to the difference in our factories and how we begin to implement automated data. The real thing, the real challenge in IPACKCHEM is that, the very first slide that I showed you, that one of the first slides I showed you where we spoke about great people. I often think when companies are beginning to look at data acquisition systems and automated reporting and all of that wonderful technology, they miss the most important cog. And Greg, touched on it earlier, which is, you've got to think about the end user. And our goal in IPACKCHEM is to create what we call line-centric autonomous teams. So when a shift begins at 6 a.m. in the morning, for the next 12 hours, that shift team owns the factory. They own the business. And therefore, we have to step change the skills of our people, as well as step change the level of data intelligence and the level of automation that we have in the plant. So it's very important that we don't lose sight of the new skills and competencies that we will need to develop in our people. Otherwise, we will have lots of wonderful information, but people really will not know how to interrogate it, and will be scared to it to some degree. What I see in many traditional factories, and many of our factories in IPACKCHEM, you would still consider as being quite traditional, is the teams come in at 6 a.m. in the morning, and it's a little bit like turning the ignition on in your car. You turn the ignition on, the computer management system assesses all of the variables within the engine, and it alarms any particular issues you need to be aware of. Well, in lots of organizations, when our operating teams turn the ignition on, the screen is blind. We're asking them to run the factory blindfolded with no data, no information. The second key area to really think about in terms of really leveraging a change in competency of people is we're spending a lot of time with Matix really thinking about the different screens, the different layers of information, what a manager wants to see, what's important to an operator, what's important to a production engineer or process engineer, and making sure whatever that information is, It's easy to see, it's easy to manage. And I'm a great believer that if when you look at a screen, no matter what that screen is, whether it's an HMI or whether it's an and-on screen in a factory, if you can't work out what it's telling you in 30 seconds, it's too complicated. So we really need to make sure we make all of the visual representation to our teams, whether they're in shifts or managers, that it's easy to manage, easy to see. And the third element of really growing our people is not just about the data and the information we give them, and that's going to give us great loss intelligence. But remember that, when a system is telling you something is about to change, when a system is telling you a motor is beginning to vary in vibration, when a system is telling you a quality characteristics is beginning to trend in the wrong direction, you need to give people the skills to eradicate the loss, eradicate the issue. And then you need to give people the skills to stop the problem, stop the loss ever coming back again. So it's great having wonderful information, but I would say don't lose sight of the skills you need to give your people so that they are able to use that data for continuous improvement. It's very, very important. The way we're looking at rolling out, and we've chosen to work with Matix, and it was a choice that was made by a factory team, not by me, not by the factory leadership team, but a factory operations team. Our first phase is focusing on machine performance, around OEE losses, and around material variance and production planning. We want to get that consolidated first. The second phase is we'll begin to look at the CTQs, the critical to quality parameters. We'll introduce into the system energy consumption, so the monitoring of energy by asset, and we'll do that by product. And also in our process, we use two very specific gases, fluorine and nitrogen. So being able to monitor those, their usage directly at the machine by minute, by hour is very, very important for us. And the final phase is when we'll begin to look at predictive analytics, moving from critical to quality parameters to critical to process parameters, correlation analytics, also beginning to think more about how we use statistics. At the moment, a lot of statistical work we do will be done through Minitab, through some statistical software. In the future, we need to think about how we can make this happen online. And in terms of our manufacturing execution systems, then we'll begin to look at how we integrate ERP, our computer management systems, our quality software, and our safety software, because in many of our factories, these are all a little bit different. The thing that I think is very important as well is whichever system, when you start looking at information systems, it's really important that whoever you choose to work with, that you want the glove to fit the hand. You don't want to force fit your organization into the glove, the system. The system's got to be moldable. You've got to be prepared to change the dimension of the glove to make it fit. And that's really, really important. And it's one of the reasons that we've been working very closely with Matix. The screen you see in the top right-hand corner is a machine screen from one of our blow motors in Crewe. And that screen is very specific for Crewe, and it's very specific for the operators. And this is really important. I think some of the challenges for us as we move forward in IPACKCHEM, and these are challenges that I've seen in Mars Wrigley and Mondelez and lots of companies that I work for. The first thing is, don't ever forget the operations team is the center of the universe. In this example, what we're talking about is an information system. The system's for them. They're the end users, and we must not lose sight of that. We've got to keep it simple. If people don't understand data or reports or screens within 30 seconds, It's too complicated, which means they're not going to make decisions. They're not going to make choices. Think about the size of your factories. And we've had to be very careful that we don't try to roll out a Matic system so fast that we harm the quality, the depth of its application. So we are being very diligent in how we're doing this. We've had to spend a good bit of time thinking about how we integrate some of our existing systems in our factories and when to do that. The next point, as leaders, we've got to listen to our teams. And again, it's a point that Greg, touched on earlier. It's so important. Think about the people that are going to use all of this wonderful data, all of this intelligence. I know in IPACKCHEM, as it has in all of my previous companies, the moment you begin to visualize real-time data intelligence, the KPIs will drop. Not because of any other reason in the accuracy of data. So we've got to be really careful that we don't criticize, condemn, or complain to factories that they've been misleading us. Just accept it and move forward. The accuracy of data will increase dramatically. And the last and really key point is the focus on the training and development of people. Really think about the skills your teams are going to need in the future in order to really optimize the use of all of these digital platforms and the automation that's going to come their way, because ultimately they run the processes, right? So and our job as kind of servant leaders is to make their jobs as easy as possible, to make sure the systems are as easy as possible. I'm gonna stop there. Thank you very much indeed for kind of taking the time to join this morning, whether it's the morning, the afternoon, or the evening for you all. And if I come to the kind of the one question from Christoph at the bottom, do you have an approach to capturing data on paper in parallel with using Matics, assuming you can't get rid of paper in a finger snap? Well, the way we're implementing Matics, Christoph, is we're not. If I take an example, our factory in Crewe, we've got 11 production lines. We're implementing it in phases, and we've been in 2 phases, 6 machines and then 5 machines. And we're being very careful that the paper recording stays in place until we're happy with the level of data accuracy that we see from Matics. We ran a proof of value trial on 1 machine to make sure that all of the metrics were in line with what we were looking for. That was the value of the trial for sure, just to make sure that the numbers we see and the way the data is going to appear is how we want it. But even rolling out, we're not going big bang. We're doing it in 2 steps. And that's exactly the way we're going to do it across the rest of the factories. We absolutely will not go big bang, because this is a massive change for the operations teams. Okay. If I stop sharing there, are there any other questions at all? Or if not, I'll hand back to Shen. No.
You're on mute, Shen.
Apologize. So really thanks, Simon, for great sharing with us the information and for the great presentation, as well as the knowledge. I think there's a lot of practical knowledge that you and great provide us. Let me just summarize with we'll do a few minutes about what is Matics and how we help to the great things that Greg and Simon share with us to move forward. So just a few words about Matics in few minutes. So Matics we're actually a real-time connected production flow management system. We are work globally with different companies. Just few of them you can see on the right side. We are currently operating around 15 countries. We are working a lot in plant management, and it's actually, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong, they said I'm in the wrong, wrong slide. Can you see now my full slides? Okay. So in general, we are working a lot with enterprise, few factories, and put things together. It's a plug and play system. The implementation is really fast in a lot of different mass production manufacturer. In general, what we are doing is just complete what Simon said before. We take the factories team, the people that really work in the shop floors, and turn them into people that can win every day, every shift. So we enable to start solving the today problem and to solve it now. And this is the aim of all the real time and taking it to the next level. In actually what we are doing, we connect and unify the production, the quality, the maintenance, and create one team across single site or one team sharing information on multi-site. And then the purpose is to win the day by day. So every day working and learn also from each other, something that Greg mentioned before, dependencies of the elder. So part of it, what we help to create is playbook, what to do if something happened, and preserve knowledge that if the elder today that are currently quit from manufacturing, etc., then the next person that will come will be able to overcome knowledge they have, and this will be the company knowledge by creating playbook and automatic procedures that will follow each of the different things happen in the shop floor in the day by day. By the end, the what one of the major things that Simon said, it's important that the day-by-day operational team will be able to work with it. And one of the things we see that we are doing, we simplify the production team adaptation for our system. It's also fast deployment, and also the result is quite good, as what Greg mentioned before. And then what is actually all this Matix is like collaborative manufacturing platform that from one end we collect in real-time data from different sources, from machines, from IoT, from combine it for the full production context with information from the ERP about the job, recipe, product, targets, and things like this. When we combine all together, you have a full pictures of what's going on in the shop floor. We take it and then we take it to the next level that also was mentioned before, the visualization. And based on this, we are doing continuous analytics, so not just that you can see what is currently the snapshot of your shop floor 24/7, but you can also get insight what is happening, what is getting wrong, and where you need to improve. And then by connecting the people, you get this message that you can improve now, and then you move to the next step. In general, we follow all the steps that Greg mentioned before. I will not go into it again, but by the end, you can have predictive analytics and go to the next step. In general, we start with companies on the visualization side, and then we go about the why, the insight, and then to the predictive. This is an example. This a simple plastic manufacturer that we work with. You look at it, you don't know what's going on. You add the matics, you know exactly which machine working, which machine does not working. You monitoring 24/7. You know your performance so far according to your target, and you can move forward and predict things. If you see that something is wrong, what to do next, you you can look more deeply. You get immediate call to action. You can open automatic tasks, and then you are always on top of your KPI and insight all day long. I will not go to details, but someone wants more details, we can go into it. In general, we have different tools for it. One of them is the manager app that help you to see what's going on 24/7, get smart alert and procedures, and you know what to do, and enable you to communicate and share knowledge with your colleagues. We are looking from single parameter point of view up to the full production or your waterfall and why it's not working. So you get very deep knowledge and insight about what's going on in every point of the day in real time, as well as historical information. So you can see what's going on online and the progress, and see what's going on. We also, when we work with multi-site, with plans like Simon mentioned before, so you can see the full site from the headquarters, compare things, compare the lines performance, compare the production, compare the teams, and not just compare, to say you don't want to say you are good and you are bad. No, you want to say you are good, let's learn from it. So you can build a corporate global team that will learn from each other, that will share information. And by this unified corporate measurement, you can learn from each other and get the best practice into the highest level. There are different things. Everything becoming digitized, like all the meetings become data-driven meetings by customized dashboard and insight, whether it's a shift meeting, whether it's daily meeting, or whether it's even monthly meeting, etc. So everything, also strategic decisions take based on knowledge and data-driven knowledge. We are One of the things that is important for us is fast deployment, very fast deployment, the connectivity to the machines. We have different really high techniques that you can connect the machine quite fast, and then the implementation is quite fast based on the cloud computing. With very low investment, you move forward. So based on your OPEX and not CAPEX, as was mentioned before by Greg, we are moving forward and take it to the higher level. And one of the most things, the major things I want to say is that these systems is system for the people in the shop floor. And when Greg said we need to eliminate human error, which is the #1 cause of productivities inefficiencies, we enable them to work with a simple solution in a day by day, in order to see the problems as fast as possible, in order to be able to analyze it as fast as possible. We are doing it automatically, and then they can take informed decision on the action, or they have a procedure what to do if something happen, and then everything becoming much faster. So you shorten the time between the event occur until you have the corrective action, and by the end you improve the bottom lines, you solve things today and not in the future, and all your teams are working together to have better efficiency, but then more revenue, to more profits to the company by production, maintenance, quality work together all day long. Matrix is much more wide solution. I will not go into it. We are go with you solution. You can start small on simple things and then go with you in connected teams with the time, as was mentioned before. And by the end, you get really nice improvement over time from taking it from reactive approach to much more responsive, productive, and proactive approach in the future. And that's all. I mean, I don't want to take more of your time. We will send the information. We will share the presentations and or what we can, and we will share the video. Any question that you have? Anybody? So again, I would like to thank you for taking the time this morning, or it's afternoon now. It's after 12. We start in the morning, finish afternoon. So thanks a lot. At least for me, it was very knowledgeable, and I learned a lot. And thanks you again, Greg and Simon, for being with us. And I wish you all a good week and productive manufacturers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Take care.
Just one.